Okay, so let's be honest. We are all, each and every one of us, totally bombarded with information every single day, right? It's like a never-ending flood.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like drinking from a fire hose. And honestly, sometimes you just feel like your brain is going to explode.
Right. And it's not just about the sheer volume. It's also about filtering out what actually matters. As learners, I think we all crave that ability to quickly grasp the essence of something without getting bogged down in a million unnecessary details. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. I mean, it's all about finding that signal in the noise, right? We have more access to information than ever before, but it's harder than ever to actually make sense of it all and extract meaningful insights.
Well, that's the exact challenge we're tackling in this deep dive. We want to give you that express route to being informed. We're diving into this super intriguing book called Inyo, which translates to bullet communication. It's by this Japanese TV producer, Anuto Motohashi, and let me tell you, he has some fascinating ideas about cutting through the clutter and making your message hit home.
Yeah, Motohashi's background is seriously impressive. We're talking about the guy behind some of Japan's most popular TV shows. Think King's Brunch, Downtown DX, even Arashi ni Shiagare, the list goes on. And what's really interesting is that he's now applying those same techniques that kept millions glued to their screens to corporate videos, right?
So this isn't just theory. This is real-world, battle-tested stuff. Like, think about the competition in Japanese television. It's cutthroat.
Yeah.
If a show doesn't grab viewers instantly, it's gone.
Absolutely. And, today we're going to break down some of Motohashi's core principles. We want to see how they can help all of us as learners communicate more effectively, especially when we're trying to, learn new things and absorb information quickly without getting overwhelmed. Sound good?
Sounds great to me. So let's jump right into it. The core concept of this book is bullet communication. Now, when Motohashi uses that term, what's the central idea he's trying to get across?
Essentially, he's saying that your communication should be, well, like a bullet. It needs to be precise, it needs to be impactful, and it needs to hit its target directly. There's no room for meandering.
In our world, where everyone's attention span is, 5 seconds? That makes a lot of sense.
Totally. And what's interesting is that this whole idea of precision in communication, it's echoed in the forewords to the book. Hang Sichi, he actually compares creating unnecessary content to creating pollution. He's like, look, every word that doesn't need to be there is just adding to the digital smog.
Wow, I like that analogy. Digital smog, that's a good one.
And then Wu Jingkai, he talks about this idea of cognitive load, which is basically the amount of mental effort it takes to understand something. He's saying effective communication should aim to minimize that load for the listener.
It's all about being respectful of the other person's time and mental energy, right?
Right.
Making things as clear and easy to understand as possible.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into Motohashi's first principle, which is don't make the listener think too hard.
Okay, yes. Anything that makes my brain work less is a win in my book.
Yeah.
So how do we actually do that? How do we make our communication less mentally taxing for the listener?
Well, a big part of it is simply keeping things concise. Motohashi points to the popularity of short YouTube videos as evidence that, people just don't have the patience for long-winded explanations anymore. He's like, get to the point.
Seriously, who has time to sit through a 45-minute tutorial when you can get the same information in 5 minutes?
Right. And to help us achieve that conciseness, Motohashi introduces this cool technique called OIYA. It roughly translates to hint and reveal, which is a pretty accurate description of what it does. It basically involves presenting information in two distinct parts to maximize the impact.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Can you give me an example? How would you actually use hint and reveal in a real-life scenario?
He gives the example of announcing a salary increase to your employees. Imagine if instead of saying, the company's been doing great, so everyone's getting a raise, you say something like, the CEO made a big decision that's going to have a major impact on your paychecks. That decision was a 10% salary increase for everyone.
Ah, I see what you mean. It creates that little element of suspense and makes the announcement itself more memorable.
Exactly. And he also emphasizes the importance of using what he calls hint words, which are little verbal cues like, that is, or just like this. They might seem insignificant, but they act as signposts for the listener, helping them follow along and pick up the key pieces of information.
It's like those little flags they put on golf courses to show you where the hole is, right?
Yeah, sort of. And this all comes back to that fundamental rule of not making the listener think too hard. You want to minimize the mental effort required to process your message.
So no more jargon, no more convoluted sentences, just straightforward, easy to understand language. Makes sense to me.
You got it. Now, once we've mastered the art of keeping it simple and concise, the next hurdle is actually getting people to listen in the first place. That's where principle number 2 comes in. Capture attention from the start, standing in the listener's shoes.
Okay, so we've got to hook them from the very beginning, right? Like within the first few seconds. It's almost like, I don't know, channel surfing, you know? If a show doesn't grab you immediately, you're clicking that remote and moving on.
Exactly. And to combat that, Motohashi introduces un-ui, the cold open. This is all about starting your communication with the most exciting, the most intriguing, the most beneficial part of your message. You got to create that instant anticipation. Think about those cooking shows that start with a shot of the most delicious-looking dish, right? They're not going to start with, like, chopping onions.
Oh, yeah. They always show you the finished product, all beautifully plated to get you drooling. And it works.
It does. And, you can apply that same principle to any kind of communication. Like, imagine if you're inviting a friend to lunch. Instead of just saying, hey, want to grab lunch sometime, you say, that amazing ramen place that was just featured on TV? Want to go check it out today?
Oh, I see. By leading with the benefit, that incredible ramen, you're making the invitation much more enticing.
Exactly. It's all about tapping into the listener's desires or concerns right away. That's also where the empathy opening comes in, which is unwo. This involves starting your communication with a question or statement that immediately resonates with your audience's experiences. Like, have you ever been frustrated by how long it takes to get a simple answer from customer service? Or wouldn't it be great if there was a way to automatically organize all your files?
It's like saying, hey, I get you. I know what you're going through.
Exactly. It builds rapport instantly and makes people more receptive to what you have to say. And he contrasts these effective openings with what he calls the good wine mellows at the bottom fallacy, which is basically the idea that you should save the best for last.
So, no more building up to the grand finale.
Well, not in today's world. You got to hit them with your best shot right out of the gate. People just don't have the patience to wait around for the good stuff. That's why he emphasizes the best first principle.
Okay, I'm getting the picture. Front load that value. So let's say we've captured their attention with a strong opening. How do we ensure that our message actually sticks and isn't forgotten 5 minutes later?
That's where principle number 3 comes in, guide the listener's understanding. It's all about structuring your information in a way that makes it easy to follow and digest. One technique he suggests is orune, the open a door technique. This involves using clear headings, bullet points, or just a logical flow that helps the listener navigate your message.
I think I get it. It's about creating those mental signposts, right? So instead of just launching into a long, rambling explanation, you break things down into digestible chunks. Like, when you're giving directions, you don't just say, go down this road for a while, then turn left, then right, then go straight. You give clear landmarks.
Exactly. You might say, go down this road until you see the big oak tree, then turn left at the gas station. It just makes it so much easier to follow along.
Right. You're providing that context and that structure. So open a door is about creating a roadmap for the listener. But how do we make the information itself more engaging?
That's where the subject and focus technique comes in, which is uonudor. The idea is to start with a clear subject, which is particularly your main point, and then add a focus, which is a specific angle or lens that makes that information more relatable and memorable.
Can you give me an example of how subject and focus would work in practice?
Sure. So let's say the subject is a new line of eco-friendly cleaning products. The focus could be something like how these products can help create a healthier home environment for your family. It's not just about the products themselves, it's about the benefits they provide.
I see. The focus helps connect the subject matter to the listener's own life and values.
Precisely. And to create that focus, Motohashi suggests using a few different strategies. He talks about highlighting benefits, sharing user testimonials, and even using rankings, which is
Rankings? You mean like the top 5 best cleaning products for pet owners?
Exactly. People love lists, and rankings tap into our natural curiosity. We want to know what's considered the best or the most popular.
It's like catnip for the brain.
Yeah, something like that. And it can be applied to, even the most mundane topics. Think the top 3 things to remember for your next meeting, or the 2 most common mistakes people make when filing their taxes.
Okay, so we've covered how to grab attention and guide understanding. But what about repetition? Sometimes you need to emphasize a point or make sure something really sinks in. How do you do that without sounding repetitive?
That's a great question. And for that, we have principle number 4, reinforce without annoying. Motohashi introduces a technique called USH, the information coding technique.
Okay, I gotta admit, that name is a bit intriguing. What exactly is information coding?
Think about it like this. You have a piece of candy, and you want to make it more appealing, so you coat it in chocolate. You're essentially presenting the candy, but with an added layer that makes it more enjoyable.
So you're not just repeating the same information over and over again, you're presenting it from different angles or with different supporting evidence.
Precisely. Like imagine you're recommending a new restaurant to a friend. Instead of just saying, it's really good, you should go, you could say, the food is amazing, the atmosphere is great, and it's in a super convenient location. You're still communicating the same basic message that it's a good restaurant, but you're doing it in a more compelling and well-rounded way.
And that adds to your credibility, right? It's not just your opinion, it's backed up by multiple points of reference.
Exactly. And this technique can be applied to written communication too. Motohashi talks about using visual cues like quotation marks, bolding, and white space to break up text and make it more visually appealing. That's otres, using visual paragraphs with symbols.
Oh yeah, because a big wall of text can be super intimidating. It's like, nope, not reading that.
It's all about making your communication as easy on the eyes and therefore the brain as possible.
Got it. So we've got grabbing attention, guiding understanding, and reinforcing without being repetitive. Now, let's say we're dealing with something that doesn't have obvious strengths or selling points. What do we do then? How do we turn those weaknesses into strengths?
That's a great question, and that's where principle number 5 comes in, turning weaknesses into strengths, the power of contrast. This is all about reframing things in a more positive light.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me some tips for turning those lemons into lemonade.
Well, one technique Motohashi suggests is uni, secret technique packaging. The idea is to add an element of intrigue to even the most mundane information by framing it as a secret or a special technique.
Oh, so it's like I'm about to reveal the secret to perfectly folding a fitted sheet.
Exactly. Even if the technique itself is quite simple, that little bit of mystery makes it more appealing. Like, here's the secret technique for getting your emails answered faster, or the one secret trick that all successful entrepreneurs use.
Clever. It creates that sense of, like, insider knowledge.
Right. And then there's ode, the rephrasing weaknesses as strengths technique. This is all about using positive language to highlight potential advantages.
Okay, so spin doctoring, but in a good way.
Haha, exactly. Like instead of saying, this product is a bit pricey, you could say, this product is an investment in quality and durability.
It's like, yeah, it costs more, but you get what you pay for.
Exactly. And then there's ode, the one super recommended reason technique. The idea here is that even if something has a lot of drawbacks, there's got to be at least one good thing about it. So you focus on that one thing and really emphasize it.
So even if it's just one tiny glimmer of hope, you make that your selling point.
Exactly. Like imagine you're setting up a friend on a blind date and the person isn't, the most conventionally attractive. You could say, okay, he's not Brad Pitt, but he's got a heart of gold and he makes the best lasagna you've ever tasted.
Uh-huh. I see what you mean. You're focusing on that one irresistible quality. And if you can't even find one super recommended reason, what then?
Well, then there's always odi, using obvious features. Sometimes the most basic function or quality can be framed as a positive.
So like, this umbrella will keep you dry.
Exactly. Or this toaster toasts bread evenly. It might seem obvious, but sometimes reminding people of the core benefit is all it takes.
Okay, and what about when you're dealing with a product or a service that's just, well, kind of boring?
Well, that's where the power of storytelling comes in. Motohashi says, people's stories are more memorable than things, which is uri. He gives the example of a plain business card holder. On its own, it's not very exciting. But if you tell the story of the craftsman who designed it and the inspiration behind it, suddenly it becomes much more interesting and memorable.
It's about adding that human element, that emotional connection.
Exactly. And another way to add emotion and make things more memorable is through contrast, which is the last technique in this section. Motohashi talks about using unexpected words to create surprise and intrigue. Like, he suggests describing certain foods as sweet, even if they're not traditionally considered sweet.
Sweet steak. I'm not sure I'm following.
It's about playing with expectations. Like, you could say, this steak has a surprisingly sweet flavor, or these carrots are incredibly sweet when roasted. It makes people pay attention.
I see. It's like a little mental jolt that makes you reevaluate what you think you know.
Precisely. And he also suggests using contrasting taste descriptors like rich or super fragrant, and even structural techniques like B inside A to create more vivid sensory experiences.
So it's all about finding ways to make things stand out and be more memorable.
And along those same lines, he introduces this idea of proactively providing a comparison scale, which is Uludia. Like, imagine you're selling a house and you want to make it seem more appealing. You could show potential buyers a similar house that's in much worse condition first.
So you're setting a lower standard of comparison.
Exactly. And finally, he talks about the power of using transition words to create contrast, which is Uludia words like however, but, and yet can really highlight a surprising or unexpected point. Like, he might be young, but he's got years of experience.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Those transition words really emphasize the contrast and make the point more impactful.
Precisely. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but there's one final principle we need to talk about, and that is the power of a single phrase.
Ah, yes. Because sometimes a single well-chosen word can have more impact than an entire paragraph.
Absolutely. And Morohashi starts by highlighting the power of using now to create a sense of immediacy, which is on.
Now. Like, just the word now.
It might seem simple, but it can be incredibly effective. Like, imagine you're applying for a job and the ad says, apply now. It creates that sense of urgency, like, don't miss out on this opportunity, act fast.
And that can be persuasive, right?
Totally. Then he talks about gilding with titles, which is unda. This is all about using impressive-sounding titles or rankings to add perceived value, like best-selling author or award-winning chef.
Those titles definitely carry weight.
And when you don't have specific titles to work with, he suggests using more general but still impactful words like urgent, super, or strongest. That's his most notable strategy.
Whoa. So even if it's not a quantifiable achievement, you can still create that sense of importance through your phrasing.
And then there's the power of only one, which is onrun. This involves highlighting the exclusivity or scarcity of something to make it more desirable. Like, this is the only product of its kind on the market, or there are only a few spots left for this exclusive event.
It's like playing on that fear of missing out.
Exactly. And finally, he emphasizes the importance of providing background information to make your message more relevant and relatable. This is union. Like, if you're selling winter coats, you might want to talk about how the temperatures are dropping and everyone's getting ready for the cold weather.
It provides that context, that why now element.
Exactly. And to make that background information even more compelling, he suggests using data, which is utro. Like, instead of just saying, it's cold outside, you could say, temperatures are expected to drop below freezing this week.
So instead of just telling people something, you're showing them.
Exactly. And that brings us to the end of our deep dives into bullet communication. It's been quite a journey, right?
It really has. We've covered so much ground. We've learned about capturing attention, guiding understanding, reinforcing key points, turning weaknesses into strengths, and using the power of language to make our message stick.
And all of these principles are rooted in the fast-paced, high-stakes world of Japanese television, where every second counts.
It's about respecting the listener's time and attention and delivering your message in a way that's clear, concise, and compelling.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is that these techniques can be applied to any kind of communication, whether it's a presentation, a conversation, an email, or even just a casual chat with a friend.
So for our listeners out there, we challenge you to take just one or two of these principles and apply them to your next communication. You might be surprised by the impact it has.
Even a small adjustment can make a big difference.
It's all about taking aim and hitting that target with precision and purpose. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.